The night was cold, and the air above the desert base was silent. Most of the world slept peacefully, but inside the control room, radar screens were alive with movement. A young radar officer frowned. He had been watching the same green dots for years: normal aircraft, commercial flights, patrol jets, but tonight was different. A strange blip appeared on the screen. It moved fast, then stopped suddenly, then moved again in a direction no human plane could. He rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe it was a technical error. But the blip was still there, glowing brighter. "Sir, we have something," the officer said. His voice shaking. The commander leaned closer. His expression turned serious. "That's no error." Within minutes, alarms rang across the base. Pilots rushed out of their quarters, helmets under their arms, running toward the hangars. Engines roared to life, cutting the silence of the desert night. The fighter jets were scrambled. Their mission: identify the unknown object. Captain Harris, a seasoned pilot with years of combat flying, felt a strange chill as he climbed into his cockpit. The ground crew strapped him in, but his eyes kept searching the night sky above. Something about this mission felt different, heavier. Eagle 1, ready for takeoff. Harris reported. His wingman, Lieutenant Cole, followed. Eagle 2, ready. The jets thundered down the runway and lifted into the darkness, climbing fast toward the stars. At first, the sky was empty, just the endless stretch of black and the glow of the moon. But then Harris saw it. "There," he whispered. A glowing object floated above the clouds. It was small, metallic, but unlike anything he had ever seen. It shimmered as if it was half light, half shadow. Cole's voice broke over the radio. "That's no plane." The object suddenly shot forward at impossible speed. The jets accelerated, but it was always ahead, like it was playing with them. "Tried to lock on." Harris ordered. Cole adjusted his targeting system. "Negative. It's too fast." The UFO stopped instantly, hanging in midair. No jet could stop like that. Harris pulled hard on the stick, circling around. The craft was silent. No engine noise, no exhaust. It just hovered like it was watching them. "Command, we have visual," Harris said into the radio. His voice was calm, but his hands were sweating. "A known object confirmed. Copy that, Eagle 1, the commander replied. "Engage with caution." Harris armed a missile. The targeting system beep. Lock achieved. His finger hovered over the trigger. But before he could fire, the UFO blinked, vanished, and reappeared behind them. Alarms screamed inside the cockpit. Harris banked hard to avoid collision. Cole shouted, "It's behind us." The UFO followed silently, like a predator studying its prey. Harris fired a flare. The glowing light shot out into the darkness, but the UFO didn't react. It drifted closer, almost touching the jet's tail. Suddenly, Harris heard something strange over the radio. It wasn't English. It wasn't any human language. It was a whisper, low and distorted, like voices layered on top of each other. Cole's breathing grew loud. "Do you hear that?" "I hear it," Harris said, trying to steady his voice. The whisper grew louder. The words made no sense, but the tone was clear. It wasn't friendly. Then, without warning, the UFO shot upward at blinding speed. Both pilots tried to follow, but it vanished beyond the radar. Silence returned. The desert night looked empty again. Harris's heart pounded. He tried to calm his breathing, but his hands shook on the controls. Cole whispered, What was that?" Harris didn't answer. He just stared at the stars. Back at the base, radar confirmed the object was gone. But the recording equipment had captured something. The strange whispers were still echoing through the system, replaying over and over like a ghostly message. When Harris and Cole landed, the commander met them on the runway. His face was pale. "You boys saw something tonight," he said quietly. "Something you will never forget." The pilots looked at each other. Both knew this was only the beginning. The base never returned to normal after that night. The pilots had seen something beyond human technology, and the whispers caught on the radio refused to leave their minds. Days passed, but the air around the squadron felt heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Radar officers kept reporting strange flashes on their screens. Sometimes the objects appeared for only a second. Other times, they stayed long enough to send the jet scrambling. But every time the fighters reached the area, there was nothing, just silence and stars. Some soldiers laughed about it. They called them ghost planes. They joked to hide their fear. But when night came and the sky grew black, the laughter always stopped. Captain Harris sat in the briefing room, his helmet on the table. Across from him, Lieutenant Cole was silent, staring at his hands. No one dared to say it out loud, but both men felt it. The UFO was watching them. The commander entered, his voice sharp. Reports are increasing. Civilians have seen strange lights too. We cannot ignore this anymore. Every squadron will fly double patrols. The room fell silent. Harris felt the tension grow. More patrols meant more chances to see the unknown again. And deep inside, he wasn't sure if he wanted that dot that night. Harris and Cole were once again in the sky. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the world below was a sea of darkness. The only sound was the steady hum of the engines. Anything on radar? Cole asked. Negative, Harris replied. But stay sharp. For a while, it was calm. To calm. Then it happened. A sudden burst of light appeared far ahead, bright, pure white, hanging above the clouds. It didn't blink like a star. It didn't move like an aircraft. It floated, steady and cold. Cole's voice broke the silence. You see that? I see it, Harris said, his throat dry. The object hovered, then slid sideways in an unnatural motion. No jet could move like that. Command, Eagle Squadron has visual. Harris radioed in. Proceed with caution, came the reply. The two jets closed in. The light grew brighter, almost too bright to look at. The clouds below glowed as if a second sun had risen. Careful, Harris warned. Don't get too close. But the object reacted before they could adjust. It flared, releasing a pulse of white energy that spread across the sky like ripples on water. The jet shook violently. Warning alarms screamed inside the cockpits. My systems are failing. Cole shouted. Harris checked his controls. His jet was losing power. The lights in the cockpit flickered. The engine coughed, and for a terrifying second, the plane felt like a falling stone. The object hovered above them, silent, as if it was watching their struggle. Come on, hold together, Harris whispered. Slamming swishes. Just before the jet dropped into a stall, the power returned. The alarms quieted, and the engine roared back to life. Harris pulled up sharply, gasping for breath. Cole wasn't so lucky. His jet was spiraling, falling fast toward the dark sea of clouds. Cole, eject now. Harris shouted. There was a pause. Then Cole's voice, eject system. It's not working. Harris's heart pounded. He dived after his wingman, fighting the pull of gravity. The glowing craft above them pulsed again, and suddenly Cole's jet leveled itself. The system's back online as if nothing had happened. Cole gasped into the radio. I didn't do that. Both jets steadied, their wings cutting through the night. But the UFO was gone. The light had disappeared as suddenly as it came. For a moment, only silence filled the sky. Harris and Cole exchanged no words. Their breathing said enough. Back at the base, engineers checked Cole's jet. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was broken. It was as if the craft had simply chosen to shut it down and then chose to give it back. In the mess hall, soldiers whispered. Some said the UFO was hostile. Others said it was playing, testing human machines. Harris sat alone, replaying the moment in his head. Why had the object spared them? Why shut down the jet instead of destroying it? That night, as Harris tried to sleep, a new fear grew in his mind. The object was not only watching, it was learning. The sun was sinking when the squadron received their next alert. The desert sky turned red, and shadows stretched across the base. Pilots were tired, but orders were orders. Captain Harris sat in his cockpit again, the controls glowing in the twilight. This time, he wasn't alone, for jets took off together, a small squadron sent to track the mysterious intruder. The radio crackled. Eagle Squadron, a known object detected. Heading 210, altitude high. Intercept immediately. Harris's jaw tightened. Copy that. We're on it. The jets climbed through layers of clouds. The world below faded, leaving only sky and silence. Then one of the pilots spoke. I've got visual. It's ahead. There it was again. The glowing craft. It hovered like before, shining cold light in the darkening sky. But this time, it didn't run. "Hold formation," Harris ordered. The squadron spread out, surrounding the object from three sides. For a moment, it just hung there, waiting. Harris felt his skin crawl. Then it moved, with a sudden burst of speed. The object shot straight through the formation, passing between the jets like a knife through water. Alarms blared, pilots shouted. The UFO turned sharply, faster than physics should allow, and came back toward them, evasive. Harris shouted. The sky erupted into chaos. Jets rolled, twisted, and dove to escape the blinding flashes of light. The UFO seemed to toy with them, darting close and then vanishing, only to reappear behind their tails. One pilot, Lieutenant Davis, snapped, "I'm taking the shot." "Negative," Harris barked. "Wait," but Davis had already locked a missile. The weapon launched with a roar, slicing through the clouds. For a heartbeat, it seemed to strike. The missile flew straight into the glowing craft and passed through it. The explosion bloomed harmlessly in the empty sky, leaving the UFO untouched. The pilots gasped in disbelief. "It's like it isn't even there," Davis muttered. Before Harris could reply, the object turned its attention on Davis's jet. It moved with frightening speed, sliding above him, then flipping upside down to match his movements. It flew only feet away, like a mirror. "Brake, Davis, brake." Harris shouted. Davis pulled hard on the stick, but the UFO followed every move, perfect and silent. Then a pulse of light rippled from its surface. Davis's jet shook violently, losing control. His voice screamed over the radio, then cut out. The jet spun downward, falling toward the dark horizon. Harris and Cole dove after him. At the last second, Davis ejected, his parachute opening against the fading light. The jet smashed into the desert below, a ball of fire marking the crash site. The UFO didn't chase the pilot. It simply turned, hovering calmly in the air again, as if daring the others to try. Harris's hands shook on the controls. Sweat stung his eyes. He knew they couldn't win this fight, but his training screamed at him to protect his squadron. "Stay sharp," he said, his voice low. "It's testing us," Cole spoke nervously. "Testing us for what?" The UFO darted forward again, locking onto Harris. For a terrifying moment, it flew so close that Harris could see its surface metallic yet fluid, shifting like liquid glass. Strange symbols glowed across it, symbols that moved like living light. He felt the same whisper in his headset, faint but there, pressing into his mind. It wasn't words, but he understood the meaning. "Prove yourselves." Adrenaline surged. Harris yanked the stick, forcing his jet into a sharp climb. The UFO followed instantly, matching every move. The dive fight began. But it wasn't like any human battle. The object never fired, never struck directly. Instead, it copied him, moved faster, forced him into dangerous dives and impossible turns. It was like fighting a reflection that was always one step ahead. The other jets tried to flank it, but the UFO split into three glowing copies, confusing radar and sight alike. Only one was real, but which one? Missiles streaked through the sky, chasing nothing but illusions. The false images blinked away, leaving the true craft untouched. Finally, after minutes of hard-pounding maneuvers, the UFO stopped. It hung in the air, silent, untouchable. Then, as suddenly as it came, it rose straight upward, glowing brighter and brighter until it vanished into the stars. Silence filled the sky once more. The surviving jets regrouped, their formation broken, their voices heavy with fear. Back at the base, commanders studied the footage in disbelief. The jets had fired everything: missiles, guns, flares, but nothing had touched it, and yet Harris couldn't forget the feeling. The whispers, the strange symbols, the way it fought without killing, like it was judging them. Cole's voice was quiet that night as they sat in the empty hangar. "They could destroy us any time they want. So why don't they?" Harris didn't answer, but deep inside, he knew the truth. The fight wasn't about destruction. It was about a message, and humanity had only begun to hear it. The crash of Davis's jet changed everything. Until then, the encounters had been dismissed as accidents, glitches, or unexplained shadows in the sky. But now, the truth could not be denied. The base was locked down. Guards stood at every gate, and no one was allowed to leave without orders. Pilots were ordered to silence. Reports were sealed. The word classified was stamped on every file. Captain Harris and Lieutenant Cole sat in a dark room, waiting. The air smelled of coffee and metal. Their uniforms were still stained with sweat and smoke from the last mission. Both men knew something big was coming down at last. The door opened. A group of officers entered, men with medals, sharp eyes, and faces that looked older than their years. Behind them came two strangers in black suits, carrying locked briefcases. The commander stood at the front. His voice was cold. "Gentlemen, what you are about to hear does not leave this room. If a single word leaks, you will be court-martialed." The pilots exchanged nervous glances. A screen flickered on at the front of the room. Grainy footage filled the wall. Radar images, satellite shots, cockpit recordings, all showing the same thing, glowing objects moving in impossible ways. "This is not new," the commander said. His tone was sharp, but there was something heavy behind his words. The first sighting was not last week. It was years ago. Decades, even. Whispers rippled through the room. One of the men in suits spoke for the first time. His voice was smooth, practiced. "The public does not know. They are not ready to know. But you," he looked at the pilots, "you have seen them, and you will see more." Cole leaned forward. "So they're real? You admit it?" The man in black gave a small smile. "Real enough to bring down one of your jets without firing a single bullet." The room fell silent. Harris's jaw tightened. He thought of Davis, sitting in a hospital bed now, lucky to be alive. The screen changed again. Now it showed satellite photos, images of the ocean, with strange lights glowing deep beneath the surface. They are not only in the sky. The officer continued. They move through water. They vanish into space. They appear over cities, then disappear like smoke. Another officer spoke, his voice low. "And sometimes they follow our pilots, just like they followed you." The whisper Harris had heard over his radio came back to him, crawling into his memory. His chest tightened. He raised his hand. "What do they want?" he asked. The men exchanged looks, but no one answered. Finally, the commander broke the silence. "We don't know, but one thing is clear. They are testing us. Every encounter is the same. They push, they chase, but they never kill." "Not yet," Cole muttered under his breath. "Not yet." The officer in black placed his briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside was a single metal fragment, no larger than a coin, but it shimmered with strange light, glowing faintly even in the dim room. "This was recovered from a crash site," the man said. "One of theirs." The pilots leaned closer. The fragment didn't look like any metal they had seen before. It seemed alive, shifting colors as it caught the light, technology far beyond ours. The man explained. "We don't know how it works. We don't even know if it's technology at all. But it is not human." Cole swallowed hard. "If they're so advanced, why are they playing with us?" The man closed the briefcase with a snap. "That, Lieutenant, is the question." The commander stepped forward again. His voice was hard now, like steel. "From this moment forward, you are not only pilots. You are witnesses. You will fly, you will record, and you will survive long enough to bring us answers. Do you understand?" The room echoed with a sharp, unified reply. "Yes, sir." But Harris didn't feel ready. He remembered the dogfight, the symbols glowing on the UFO's surface. He remembered the feeling that the craft wasn't attacking, but watching, judging. When the briefing ended, the pilots were dismissed in silence. No one dared to joke. No one dared to laugh. The truth had been laid bare, and it was heavier than they had ever imagined outside the room. Harris stood alone in the hallway. Cole joined him, his face pale. "What do you think?" Cole asked quietly. Harris stared at the locked doors behind them. "I think." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think we're not fighting them. I think we're being measured." Cole frowned. "Measured for what?" Harris looked at the night sky through a small window. Far above, beyond the clouds, he thought he saw a faint flash of light like a star moving where no star should. He didn't answer. But in his chest, a quiet fear grew. Whatever was out there wasn't finished with them. Not by a long shot. The days after the secret briefing were heavy. Pilots moved through the base with quiet eyes and stiff shoulders. The laughter that once filled the mess hall was gone. No one wanted to admit it, but everyone was afraid. They had trained for war against other nations, not against shadows from the stars. Missiles, guns, radar, none of it worked. What good was a fighter jet against something that could vanish in an instant? Captain Harris lay awake in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. Sleep never came. When he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing craft again, saw the way it moved like a predator. And always, in the back of his mind, he heard the whispers. Cole found him the next morning in the hangar, sitting beside his jet. The younger pilot's face was pale, his eyes tired. "You ever wonder why we're still flying?" Cole asked. Harris glanced at him. "It's our job." Cole shook his head. "Our job is to win fights. This isn't a fight. It's suicide." Harris didn't answer. He looked at the metal bird beside him. The same machine that had saved his life so many times before. But against the UFOs, the jet felt small, powerless. Later that day, the commander gathered the pilots again. His voice carried across the briefing room like thunder. "We do not run. We do not hide. If they come again, we meet them head on. That is what we were trained for. That is what we will do." Some pilots nodded. Others looked away, their hands trembling. One older pilot, Major Torres, stood up. His voice was firm. "Fear is natural, but fear is not weakness. Those things up there may be stronger, faster, smarter, but they will learn one thing tonight. Humanity does not bow." His words struck something inside the room. For the first time in days, eyes lit with fire again. The pilots straightened in their seats. Fear was still there, but it began to burn into something else, resolve. Harris felt it too. Deep in his chest, a quiet strength grew. Maybe they couldn't win, but they could stand. And that mattered. That night, the squadron launched again. Not to jets this time, but 6. The desert runway thundered under their engines as they lifted into the sky. Flames lighting the dark, the radios buzzed with nervous chatter. Cole's voice broke through. "Think they'll show?" "They always show," Harris replied. For a while, the sky was calm. Stars glittered above, and the land below stretched like black ocean. The silence pressed against their ears. Then the radar beeped. "Contact," Torres reported. Bearing north, closing fast, the object appeared out of nowhere. A sphere of light, glowing brighter with each second. But this time, it didn't run. It came straight toward them. The squadron spread into attack formation. Missiles were armed, guns loaded. "On my mark," Harris ordered. But before he could give the word, the object released something new. Not light, not energy, but symbols. Strange glowing shapes appeared in the air above the squadron, drawn in lines of pure white fire. They hung like writing on the night itself, moving and shifting as if alive. "What the hell is that?" Cole whispered. No one answered. The symbols pulsed, brighter and brighter, until the sky itself seemed to vibrate. The jets shuddered, their systems flickering. But this time, nothing shut down. The craft wasn't attacking. It was communicating. Torres' voice was calm. "It's talking to us." Harris's hands gripped the stick tightly. His heart hammered. He didn't understand the symbols, but deep inside, something told him they weren't random. They were a message. The squadron held their formation. Not one pilot turned away. The object hovered, glowing symbols circling around it. Then, slowly, it rose higher, vanishing into the stars once again. The symbols faded, leaving only empty sky. For several long minutes, no one spoke. Finally, Cole's voice came, soft but steady. "We're still alive." Harris nodded to himself. Not just alive, chosen. Back at the base, engineers reviewed the cockpit footage. The strange symbols filled the screens, but no computer could read them. The scientists shook their heads. "It's language," one said. "But not ours." The commander turned to the pilots. His voice was low. "Whatever they are saying it to you?" Harris stood straighter. He still felt fear in his blood, but now it burned alongside something stronger. The UFOs were not only watching, they were speaking. And humanity was finally ready to answer. The symbols in the sky changed everything. No one in the base could explain them. Scientists worked day and night, trying to decode the glowing shapes, but they found nothing. Some believed it was a warning. Others said it was a test. But one thing was clear. The UFOs were coming back. The squadron was placed on high alert. Jets stood ready on the runway every hour. Pilots barely slept, their helmets resting beside them like shields before battle. Harris felt the tension growing with each day. Something was building, something bigger than before. That night, the call finally came. Multiple contacts, the radar officer reported, his voice shaking. Not one, not two, at least 5 unknowns, moving fast, heading towards civilian airspace. The commander didn't hesitate. Scramble everything. All squadrons launch. The base exploded with movement. Engines roared, lights flashed, and within minutes, more than a dozen jets shot into the dark sky. Harris led his squadron, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. "This is it," he said over the radio. "Stay tight. We fight together." The higher they climbed, the clearer the threat became. Ahead of them, 5 glowing spheres drifted among the stars. They pulsed with light, moving in perfect formation, like hunters circling prey. Cole's voice cracked in disbelief. "There's more than one this time." "Eyes up," Harris replied. "We don't run." The UFOs moved first. With a flash, they broke formation and shot forward, splitting across the sky like streaks of lightning. The jets scattered to avoid collision and engage. Harris shouted. Missiles streaked through the night. Explosions lit up the clouds. But the UFOs dodged every shot, moving with impossible speed. They twisted, blinked, and reappeared behind the jets before anyone could react. The air became chaos. Radio chatter filled with shouts, alarms screamed, and the dark sky erupted with fire. Harris locked onto one of the glowing craft and fired. The missile tore through the air, chasing its target. For a moment, it looked like another failure. But then impact, a blinding flash lit the sky. The UFO flickered, its light trembling. "Direct hit," Torres shouted. But instead of exploding, the craft wavered and fell, tumbling toward the ocean below. The pilots gasped. For the first time, they had hurt one. "They're not invincible," Harris breathed. The hope was short-lived. The remaining UFOs reacted instantly, surging forward with terrifying speed. One pulsed, sending a wave of energy that knocked a jet spinning into the clouds. Another darted behind Torres's tail. "It's glow blinding. Brake." "Brake," Harris shouted, but it was too late. Torres's jet shuddered and dropped from the formation. His voice cut out. The squadron fought hard, but the UFOs moved like predators. Missiles missed, bullets passed harmlessly through their glowing skins. And still they pressed the attack. Harris forced his jet into a climb, one of the UFOs chasing him. He rolled sharply, fired flares, then dove straight down through the clouds. The craft followed, every move perfectly mirrored. His heart pounded. He felt the same whispers pressing into his skull again. Words without sound. Demands without language. Show us your strength. Adrenaline surged through him. He pulled his jet up at the last second, dragging the UFO into a sharp climb. Cole appeared from the side, firing his last missile. This time, it struck. The UFO flared, light tearing across its surface. It spun, smoke trailing from its glowing body, before vanishing into the sea. The sky went silent for a heartbeat. 2 UFOs were gone, but the remaining 3 hovered above them, glowing brighter than ever. "Careful," Harris warned. "They're angry now." The UFOs moved closer, surrounding the jets. But instead of attacking, they stopped. The glowing symbols appeared again, burning across the clouds like writing in the sky. "What are they saying?" Cole whispered. No one answered. The symbols shifted, faster and faster, until the clouds themselves lit up with white fire. Then, just as suddenly, the UFOs rose in unison. Their lights stretched higher, faster, until they vanished into the stars. Silence returned. The squadron regrouped, their formation broken, their voices heavy with exhaustion, back at the base. The mood was grim but different. For the first time, they had proven something: the UFOs could be hurt. But Harris couldn't shake the feeling in his chest. The fight hadn't been about victory or defeat. The whispers were clear now. The UFOs weren't trying to destroy them. They were testing them, measuring humanity's courage. And tonight, humanity had passed. The base was silent after the battle. The runways were dark, the hangars half empty. The jets had returned, but not all of them. Torres' seat was empty. The squadron carried the weight of both victory and loss. Harris sat in the briefing room, his helmet on the table, staring at the flickering screen. The scientists and commanders filled the room with arguments. Some called it war. Some called it a warning. Others said it was something more. But then the alarms sounded again, not because of an attack but because of a discovery. A patrol ship had found something floating in the sea where one of the UFOs had fallen. Recovery team dragged the wreckage back to the base under heavy guard. When the crate opened, silence filled the hangar. Inside was not twisted metal, but a glowing shard, smooth and alive with energy. The object pulsed with light, almost like a heartbeat. No one dared touch it. But Harris stepped forward. As soon as he approached, the shard responded. Symbols lit across its surface, the same shapes they had seen in the sky. "It's talking," one of the scientists whispered. Harris felt the pressure in his head again. The same whispers he had heard in the cockpit. But now they were clearer. "You are seen. You are tested. You are chosen." He staggered back, clutching his head. "What did it say?" Cole demanded. "They're not here to kill us," Harris said slowly. "They're watching us, judging us." The room erupted in confusion. The commander slammed his fist on the table. "What does that mean? Spies? Invaders?" But Harris shook his head. "No, something else. They wanted to see how far we go, how much we fight to protect each other." As the shard pulsed, the hangar's lights flickered. The symbols expanded, glowing across the walls, painting the entire room with alien writing. Slowly, the shapes shifted into something more familiar: human letters. One word appeared: prepare. The silence was heavier than before. No one moved, no one spoke. Cole broke the silence with a whisper. "Prepare for what?" No answer came. The shard went dark, leaving the room in cold silence. That night, Harris stood outside the base, staring at the stars. The sky was calm, but he knew the truth. This was not the end. The UFOs had not come for conquest. Not yet. They had come to test humanity's courage, to measure their strength, to see if they were ready. And the message was clear. Something greater was coming, something beyond what anyone could imagine. Humanity had passed the first test, but the real challenge had yet to begin. Harris whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "We'll be ready."